my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt-Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place for women to come together to share their childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from women all over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Brentwood Home. Go natural in your nursery with Brentwood Home. This family-owned company has been crafting mattresses and bedding essentials in Los Angeles for decades, using naturally, ethically sourced materials that are safe for your family and the environment. You can outfit your nursery with their top-rated crib mattresses, changing pads, and nursing pillows made with healthy fibers like organic cotton and organic coconut husk. You can visit brentwoodhome.com/birthhour and use the code BIRTHHOUR for 15% off your purchase. At the end of this episode, I'll be talking to Danny about her experience shopping for a natural crib mattress with Brentwood Home. And you're also going to get the chance to win one of their Wild Fern crib mattresses. The giveaway will be on today's show notes page. Today's birth story guest is Lindsey Bliss, who has given birth to 6 babies, but she's sharing 4 birth stories, and that's because she's had 2 consecutive twin births. Hi, Lindsey. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thanks for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Excited to be here.
Can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Okay, where do I start? My name is Lindsey. I am the mother to 7. I have a 21-year-old stepdaughter, Bella. I have an 11-year-old daughter. I have 8-year-old twins. And I have 5-year-old twins, and I have a 1-year-old baby. And I'm married. I have a husband, and I got a dog, and I have some turtles, and I have a cat. We're one big, beautiful madhouse. So.
I love it. Well, I know a lot of your births are very different, so we're going to try to squeeze them all in. Let's start with that first pregnancy and kind of what you had in mind for a birth at that point.
My first pregnancy was a very welcome surprise. I wasn't ever planning on having children. I was content just being a single person in the universe, and I guess the universe had other plans. So I became unexpectedly pregnant, and I just kind of went along for that ride. My mother was a childbirth educator and had delivered me, my brother and sister, all using the Bradley method, and she had unmedicated delivery. So I had an idea of what I wanted, but I really didn't fully know. I ended up getting a doula. I had some midwives that worked within a hospital. I was not really working at the time, so I had to choose something that Medicaid covered. So I had a little glimpse about what that was like, navigating through Medicaid in New York City as a pregnant person who was unmarried. And then the birth, I think I went a day or two past my due date. And instead of just waiting it out, I didn't contact my care provider or my doula. I decided to just take a whole bunch of castor oil, which in hindsight was so stupid. I ended up vomiting, pooping my brains out. I went into labor fast and furious. So they were every 2 minutes apart right from the gate. We rushed over to the birthing center, and I was only, I think, 4 centimeters, and they were going to send me home. I think at one point I got on my hands and knees and started mooing like a cow, and they're like, okay, she's going to stay. And I went from 4 centimeters to 10 within about an hour. And that experience, I actually left my body, and I watched the birth from the ceiling. I completely disassociated. I have previous trauma. I'm a rape survivor. And I never knew there could be a link between sexual trauma and childbirth. So I watched my birth from the ceiling, and all my memories are from above. So it's a little trippy. I had on paper, if I were to write my birth story, it was like fast. It was unmedicated. I had a doula. I had a midwife, all the things, a supportive partner. But it was wildly traumatic for me on an emotional level. I think I was in denial at how major childbirth was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I know all the things. We've been doing this forever, and not really wrapping my head around how major of a life transition this would be, not just physically and mentally. It was huge. And I didn't give it the credit it deserved during my pregnancy. So it all came as a big shock to me. The birth, postpartum, all of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that something that you began to process in your postpartum period, or how did that go?
Yeah, I mean, my postpartum period was half really beautiful and magical and half really dark. And I was in this place of mourning. You know, I never realized how selfish I was before I had kids. You know, I worked as a rape crisis counselor. I did volunteer work. I thought I was a pretty giving, generous person. And once I gave birth, I realized how selfish I actually was. And I mourned my former life a little bit. You know, the transition into becoming a mother was a lot rockier than I anticipated. I loved my daughter almost instantly, but I also didn't love my new role of being a mother initially, you know, right in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So the first month postpartum, I stayed inside. I didn't really get out and socialize. And I guess, you know, it moved past the baby blues. You know, yeah. People called it the baby blues. I was like, well, it felt a little more intense than that, but this must be normal.
Was it something that you eventually did get help with, or was it just kind of a day by day get through it?
You know, I'm a lifer in therapy ever since my rape. Prior to getting pregnant, I have been going to therapy. So I ended up just continuing my therapy. I didn't end up going on medication. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, maybe I should have just gotten off that ledge and it would have been a little bit more helpful. I don't know. In hindsight, I look back and I think, I think I had a little bit of postpartum depression. And I know I have anxiety and PTSD already. I think that giving birth definitely triggered it.
Right. So what's the age gap between the set of twins, the first set of twins?
Okay. So my first daughter was born. My boyfriend at the time and I decided to get married after the birth of our daughter, Mia. And then we planned a pregnancy. We're like, let's do this. You know, he had an older daughter who was 8 when we met. We had our daughter, Mia, together, which was my first birth. And Mia was about 2 years old when we decided to start trying. And we were hoping for one.
As you do.
We were hoping for one healthy baby. And what was unplanned was getting pregnant with twins. I have no twins really in my family line. I was not on fertility drugs or seeking out, help to get pregnant. So getting pregnant with spontaneous twins was not something I had factored in. I had planned a home birth initially. And my gut was just telling me that, maybe it's better to do this at a hospital this time and do it with an OB and not have a home birth. Because my first was in a birthing center within a hospital. So for the second birth, I wanted it to be a home birth. And when I found out it was twins, I switched to an OB.
So what was that like processing that you guys were having twins, especially after kind of a rough transition into motherhood for you?
I mean, at this point, I feel like my first was the hardest thing I'd ever done, transitioning from a non-parent to a parent. Mm-hmm. The crushing responsibility of being a parent and having to make sure that this little person is alive was huge. So having twins wasn't as major for me, which sounds crazy, but transitioning to being a mother was harder. The twin factor, definitely, I think I was in denial for most of the pregnancy. Oftentimes with a second pregnancy, we're so focused on our first child that we're not so focused on the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's true, except for when you have twins in your belly. I feel like it's hard to not focus on that. But for you, it just felt like another pregnancy.
Yeah, I gained almost 70 pounds with my first singleton pregnancy. So with twins, I was eating better. I was more active because I was chasing a toddler. Mm-hmm. I actually had a healthier pregnancy with my twins. I didn't really have any issues. I was going for scans all the time, which was definitely different for me. Mm-hmm. It was definitely a medically managed pregnancy, which I didn't have the first time around. I mean, I did, but not to this extent. So it was really different, and I kept in my head going, oh, maybe I should have done this at home. But there was, I was listening to that little voice inside that was like, maybe not. So I picked an OB who, I should have listened at the time to that inner voice that was like, maybe switch to a different practice. I mean, I liked her, but she was like, don't get a doula. There's not enough room in the operating room where you deliver for a doula. And you have to get the epidural. And you more than likely will have a C-section and all these things that, I felt that I didn't have a choice in.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into labor, the OB that I had initially was working with wasn't on call the day I was there. When I went into spontaneous labor at 35 weeks, there was some male OB. And I had mentioned before that I'm a survivor. So a male OB and me were not, especially a stranger who I'd never met. There are some wonderful male OBs who I love working with and who I would let deliver my babies. But I had never met this man. He had offered to just do a C-section while I was in labor. The babies weren't in distress. They were happy. And I'm like, can I just give it a shot? They were both head down. I felt like I had to fight a little bit and I had to advocate for myself. My partner was awesome, but he was also filling out paperwork and dealing with all the crap that you got to deal with when you're giving birth in a hospital. I had a successful vaginal delivery at 35 weeks. So if I had attempted a home birth, it wouldn't have happened anyway because they were born a little bit prematurely. They ended up going right home with me. But that birth was what inspired me to become a birth doula. After that birth, I felt like I had to fight and I felt like I was a little disempowered and that I didn't want that to happen to other people. And then when I got pregnant the next time, which was a surprise, my husband and I are obviously not so great with birth control. He didn't want any more kids. I wanted more children. So it was a very welcome surprise for me to get pregnant again after I had my first set of twins. And I had become a doula when my twin girls were 6 months old. So I wanted more babies. I became addicted to babies. Again, probably needed more therapy and less babies, but that's a whole nother podcast. But I then got pregnant again, and I don't know, it was funny. I kept reading online, like, what are the chances of having twins again? And I felt sad that I was only going to have a singleton this time after I had my twins. I know it's so funny. And I just kept thinking, well, it could be twins again. And my husband, he was like, I really think it is. So when we went to the first ultrasound and it was twins again, I think that I was in shock for weeks. I couldn't even really process it. No one believed us when we said we were having a second set of twins.
Yeah, that's not the most common.
No. And I didn't know anybody that it had happened to. And I felt really excited, but also really scared out of my mind. Mm-hmm. I didn't have a network of other parents that were experiencing multiples except online and social media. And those were the only people that I could reach out to and ask questions. There's been some wonderful online resources, Birthing Multiples Naturally on Facebook. And there's some places now as a birth doula, I know, but at the time I didn't have all the resources that I have now. So when I got pregnant with my second set of twins, I knew I needed to do it differently. I knew my body could birth twins vaginally. I didn't doubt my body's capability to birth twins out of my body. So I hired a home birth midwife for my second set of twins, and it was my easiest birth. I went to 40 weeks, which is insane. I was losing my mind. I think that was the hardest part about the pregnancy, was thinking that they were coming at 35 weeks because my first set did. Because what do? We compare pregnancies. What else would we do? Just compare. Well, the last time this happened. So I assumed I'd go at 35 weeks, and I went to 40 weeks. It was probably from start to finish 3 hours. There were no real complications, and dare I say easy. I know that sounds crazy. My other births were not easy. My first birth I thought was really traumatizing. It was physically super fucking painful. My second delivery, I had an epidural, but prior to getting the epidural, I had so much fear that it was really a traumatic experience as well. This time I didn't have the fear. I didn't have the anxiety. I had a support team that I feel like I was wrapped in a warm hug, and I didn't have, like, when I wasn't experiencing anxiety, I didn't process what was happening to my body in labor as pain. You know, the term orgasmic birth and you hear from Deborah Pascali Bonanno. I'm butchering her last name. She was my doula trainer back when I trained as a doula, and like, who has orgasmic births, right? And this experience was the closest thing I'm going to get to my orgasmic birth. Baby A was born, and then baby B came out, and he was in the call, which was really neat, seeing him come out in the amniotic sac. And baby A was 8 pounds, and baby B was 7.5 pounds. So they were these massive babies, and they latched on right away. So I had newborn twins, 2-year-old twins, and then a 5-year-old and my stepdaughter. So it was quite the crew. And at this point, my postpartum experience was actually really good. I'm not sure what shifted. I think just that I kind of understood the lay of the land postpartum. I knew when to ask for help. I knew if breastfeeding wasn't going great, I knew that I could ask for different resources. I also knew that, supplementing was not the end of the world with feeding twins. I had a girlfriend who was providing me with her breast milk when I needed to supplement. My first set of twins, the only option was formula because I didn't know what the other options were. So my second set of twins, I definitely had a lot less anxiety. And then, and there's more. And then I got pregnant with Olympia. Again, this was another very welcome surprise. Her pregnancy was the worst. I had a really awful pregnancy. I started bleeding right in the beginning of the pregnancy, all the way up until like 15 weeks, maybe even further. I don't remember exactly, but I bled through the first trimester into the second trimester. I had a subchorionic hematoma. So I just kept waiting, they call it a threatened miscarriage, and I'd gone to the ER. I had a home birth midwife, and I actually switched to an OB practice because I wanted sonograms and information. I wanted confirmation that I had a baby that was alive. It was a pregnancy that really triggered my PTSD and my anxiety. So it was probably the most anxiety filled out of all of my pregnancies. And I naively thought when I first got pregnant, I'm like, oh, this is my 6th baby. It's only one. This is going to be fucking cake. I was so wrong. I was so wrong. She is my medicine baby. She's kind of taught me to just embrace what comes your way instead of thinking that you've got something down. She schooled me. So I had the subchorionic hematoma. I was bleeding up until, I'd said 15 weeks. It might have been closer to 20 weeks. When the bleeding subsided, I then got results back that I had a very high chance of having a baby with Down syndrome and trisomy 18. So there was a chance that the baby wasn't compatible with life, which, with my other pregnancies, I had never encountered that before. I'd always had the results always came back good, and I just breezed through my pregnancy. So
this was from the ultrasound, or did you have blood work?
I had blood work. I had the first blood work, which was the early DNA blood work that came back great. So I thought I was fine. And then I did a quad screening, which they're now not using as much, where they do the nuchal and then they do the quad screening. And that came back with levels that were concerning. I was working with an OB practice who strongly encouraged getting an amnio because the probability of having a child with Downs was extremely high. My husband and I had a chat. He's like, if there were anybody that could welcome and take on the challenges of having a child with a disability, it's us, which made me feel a lot more at ease. But then the idea that I would have a child that wouldn't be able to thrive outside of my womb was something I'd never grappled with before. So that was really, really challenging. I had the amnio. I fainted as soon as I left the amnio. The process itself wasn't painful. The OB that did the procedure was actually amazing. It's just after the procedure, I fainted in the car on the way home just from all of it. It was just too much. and then waiting for those results. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my entire life. And I've gone through some shit. Waiting to hear that I had a healthy baby was one of the hardest things I've ever had to, it's almost as if I was holding my breath for 2 weeks or however long to get the results back. And everything ended up being okay. And my intuition was telling me the whole time that it's okay. But it's the first time I stopped listening to my intuition and listening to my body and listening to my baby. So we got over that hurdle. The birth itself, I switched then back to a home birth midwife. Once everything came back okay, I felt confident enough. And I said, my poor midwife, I'm like, will you take me back? I felt like a lover who was cheating. Do you know? I'm like, will you please take me back? And she's like, yeah, she knows I'm kind of out of my mind at this point because she had delivered my twins. So we had formed a relationship both personally and professionally since she's a midwife and I'm a doula. We run in small circles here in New York. So she took me back. And that birth was the fastest of all of my births and probably the most intense. I had seen my midwife in the morning and I was approaching 40 weeks. It was like 39 plus 6. And my midwife was going out of town. There was no pressure for her to deliver me. Her partner could have delivered me. I didn't really care, but she's like, hey, I'll do a membrane sweep. And I was all for it. I'm somebody that as long as you're telling me, I'm okay with nudging things along. That night, I went into labor. I had contractions probably every 7 minutes. So I gave her a text and I said, nothing's really happening. I'm so fine. She knows me though. So she was probably already driving as I was texting her. I'm like, everything's fine. I didn't wake up my husband because he was asleep. The contractions were feeling really good. They were kind of wrapping around. I had this big chunk of rose quartz in my hand. During the pregnancy, because I was so stressed out, I had purchased and found and borrowed huge chunks of rose quartz. So they was just all over. And so I'm holding this big chunk of rose quartz and I'm thinking in my head, the mantra I kept using was the intensity of the contractions cannot be stronger than me because they are me. This is me. My body is doing this. And so I'm kind of loving this this early labor bit. And so, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes go by and I've had a couple contractions already and my water just bursts. And with most of my deliveries, my water doesn't break. I've only had my water broken while I'm pushing. So for the first time I had my water break. And then I woke up my husband. He jumped up. I think before helping me or getting me anything, he went downstairs to make coffee and take a shit. I'm like, really? All our kids were asleep, which was something I was a little concerned about. My stepdaughter was living outside of the home, so she was taken care of. But the little ones, the 5 little ones were asleep. So this was happening in the middle of the night. I texted my midwife and said, my water broke. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm walking around. She's like, can you please lay down? I think she thought this baby was going to shoot out of me. And in my head, I'm like, this isn't going to happen that fast, And so at that point, she was probably a few blocks away once I texted her because she has this sixth sense. She kind of, she knew. And as soon as my water broke, it was all kind of a blur at that point. I'm holding onto my rock saying my mantra. And at one point, one of the contractions just floored me. And I threw the rock at my wall. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm done. I'm out. It's over. I don't want to do this anymore. And so my midwife showed up. I had texted my doula partners at Carriage House Birth. So they had been doulaing me throughout this whole stressful pregnancy. So their role was pivotal during the pregnancy. And so I was texting them casually right when the labor had started. But silly me told them that I was fine. So none of them showed up while I was in the throes of it, but that was probably okay because I don't think anybody could have done anything for me at that point. So the midwife showed up she's like, yeah, you're doing great. You're doing great. And I was like, can you please check me? You know, I like information. And she's like, you don't want me to check you. You're so close. You really don't want my hand all up in there. I'm like, I actually do. Please check me. Because at this point, I'm thinking we're transferring. I'm going to get pain management. Fuck this. She goes, we wait for the next contraction, and she went to go check me, and the head came out. The fetal ejection response, where the baby just boop, pops right out. That's what happened. It happened super fast. And my partner at Carriage House, Sam, who was one of my doulas, showed up before I delivered the placenta. My partner at Carriage House, Domino, my other partner, we're a triad at Carriage House. She showed up and brought me roasted chicken and vegetables right after I delivered. So I had this amazing village of support after the birth. I had a friend throw me a mother blessing during my pregnancy. So I had all of these amazing, powerful sister, friend, doula colleagues all holding space for me. Postpartum, I had never felt so good after a birth. It was pretty amazing.
I guess at that point you had seen like so many births and people in that postpartum period that you kind of mashed everything up to be your perfect scenario.
I finally got it right, and it only took 6 babies. But I nailed it. I really nailed it because I knew what I needed emotionally. And I think as a younger person having babies, like when I started this journey, I didn't know what I needed because I didn't fully know who I was. So I was growing and evolving as I was having these babies. So my postpartum experience with my last baby, the pregnancy I could have done without. The birth was super intense, but it was about an hour start to finish. And I got to experience the fetal ejection response where the baby just flies right out of you. There was no effort on my part. It just happened. So that was really awesome. My postpartum experience, I remember one of my husband's friends brought me lasagna. And I think I remember the taste of the lasagna more than I remember like sniffing my newborn's head post-delivery.
That's awesome.
So I was really well nourished. And I don't know, transitioning with her with a tribe of, or a wolf pack, I'm sorry, that's the term I like to use, wolf pack of children. It was easier with her, introducing her to all the kids. They really all welcomed her with open arms. They want to know when we're having more babies. I mean, my poor kids. They are so open and wanting to give. And, you know, we've talked and I'm like, I'm done having babies. If I had a partner that was willing to have more, I probably would. I keep threatening him with fostering children. And I said I would give him a couple more years because I know that that type of commitment is not something that we can give as a family right now. But in the future, that's something that we want to do.
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about just parenting that many kids, especially in New York City.
Oh, man. It's, you know, it is embracing chaos. It is drawing this outline around the chaos. So there's some organization to it, but it's learning about surrender. You know, believe it or not, before I had kids, I was a little bit type A. And now having all these kids, I've kind of learned, instead of like tensing up and fighting that wave that's coming towards you, to relax my body and just ride over that wave. And that's kind of how I look at parenting. You know, it's, I mess up every day. You know, mom guilt is no joke. I mess up every day. I wish I had done better. And then I wake up the next day and I try again. And that's the beauty of it. You get to try again. I think the thing about parenting is my thing is I really want to keep stuff real. I hate the glossy parenting bullshit that you see out there. Like, this is what breastfeeding looks like. This is what this beautiful water birth looks like. It's like, yes, those experiences are possible, but let's show the real stuff, the gritty stuff, the times where you lose your cool and you curse at your kids, or, you know, the times when your birth is not an orgasmic birth and it's one of the most traumatic experiences you've ever had in your life. I mean, keeping it real, I think, is going to help other parents survive parenting and have positive experiences and, you know, keeping it real.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I feel like that's in some ways becoming more common, and then in other ways it's constantly getting shut down, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely two sides of it. And I don't know. I don't have a filter. It is one of my biggest gifts. It can also be a curse at times because I'm not afraid to say it like it is. You know, I'm definitely not the doula for everybody. I'm certain people's flavor, if that makes sense.
Well, are there any resources that you routinely recommend to pregnant or new moms?
Obviously, you know, my shout out to my business is Carriage House Birth. We're in New York and Los Angeles, and we provide doula services. We just started training doulas, so we're hoping that we can contribute to changing maternal health care for the better. Resources, I love Kelly Mom for breastfeeding. You know, I think social media can actually be wonderful for these resources. I think the Birth Hour is a great resource for people hearing stories about real experiences. I love a lot of other social media accounts that I've become friends with through the years in doing this work. I'm proud of all of the women advocating for people of color in birth right now. That's something that we're having a lot of conversations about, how to be an ally as a white birth worker, decolonizing birth. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the birth community going on right now. So my resource list is very long depending on who's asking. If you're a birth worker, I've got resources. If you're a new mom, I've got some resources. If you're, a trans parent, I've got some resources.
Well, where's the best place for people to connect with you if they have questions or just want to reach out?
Info at Carriage House Birth is the best way. I'm also on Instagram at Doula Bliss, and you can direct message me. I'm happy to help anybody on whatever journey they're embarking on. I do specialize in twins, hence the twins twice thing. So I teach twin magic classes, which I do in person in New York and sometimes in Los Angeles, and also via FaceTime. So that's been my thing lately, is the twin prep stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey, for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Oh, it is my pleasure.
Now we're going to talk to Danny Hampton about her experience shopping for a crib mattress with Brentwood Home. Hi, Danny. Thanks for coming on the Birth Hour today to talk about Brentwood Home with me.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
Can you tell listeners just a little bit about you before we get started?
Oh, yeah, of course. So I just had my third baby. I feel like there's a million things you could say about, life right now, but that's the biggest one. So just had our third baby, a girl. I'm a mom of 3 now. I live in Prescott, Arizona with my husband, where I own a PR and social consulting firm. And I work with a lot of different brands, the biggest one being Ergo Baby. So a lot of their stuff that you see are things that I put together with our team, and it's just really fun. I used to be a high school English teacher, so writing and reading are just a part of things that make me me. And I also have a personal blog, and through that I get to try out a lot of really cool products, including Brentwood Home, which I just discovered while I was pregnant with the third baby that I mentioned, Olive. And I just had her on March 10th. And it's just been so wild going from 2 to 3 kids, but it's amazing. So I'm excited, to talk about all the good baby stuff with you guys.
Yeah, you have like a big enough gap that you probably had given away most of your baby stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. And that was the thing. We were like, oh my gosh, we're going to be so great. We don't need anything. And then we started going through stuff. We're like, wait, actually, we got rid of everything because it's been 4 years, and I'm a big minimalist when it comes to stuff in our home. So I gave away almost everything after Charlie because I wasn't sure when we'd be having another baby. So the mattress was one thing we really needed. And to be honest, even if I would have held on to our old mattress, I definitely would have upgraded knowing what I know now.
Yeah. So what were like the main things you were looking for when you were shopping for a crib mattress?
Well, the biggest thing that I didn't really think about the first time I was shopping, or the first 2 times, I didn't really think too much about the organic or having a natural mattress. Back then, I really just needed something that I could just get quickly and I could just put on my registry. It was before they had things like Baby List and all those things. I just did Babies R Us or something, and I got a very cheap mattress. But now when I was looking for Olive, I knew a lot more about organic and natural products. I knew it was something that was important to us. was to get a mattress that would make me feel good about it. She's laying on this thing all the time, for 12, 14 hours a night, and then during naps.
Right. So Brentwood Home, their big thing is just using all organic materials and natural flame retardants and things like that so that it's healthy for baby, right?
Yes. And one of the big things that got me is when I was doing my research and reading through, they have an organic coconut husk layer. So they have a 2-sided mattress. That's what we have. We have the Wild Fern 2-stage crib mattress. So what I love about this is that you flip it over. The first side has that organic coconut husk layer, and it's firm for infants. And then on the other side, there's an organic latex layer for your baby as it grows, for your toddler. And I love that it really is making a distinction between the hard side for infants and then the other side for your growing child.
Yeah, they show the cookie slice picture of it on the website, and it's so crazy that you can use coconut husks to make a mattress.
I know. And then I was thinking, had I cut open my old mattress, it would have been scary.
Yeah.
God knows what's in there. And this just makes me feel really good. And she's not sleeping in her mattress at night yet, but she does take naps in there in the daytime. And it just makes me feel good to know that she's laying on a firm organic coconut husk layer. I just know that it's organic and healthy and just gives me good peace of mind.
Yeah. So my first concern though, when I read that was what happens if there's a blowout. But then I read on the website that it's waterproof. There's a waterproof cover that's also made of natural materials, not like PVC and stuff.
Right. That's exactly what I thought too. I was thinking oh my God, this is not going to be really good. Like a blowout on coconut husk. How is that going to work?
Exactly.
It's truly waterproof, of course. It's great. They don't have chemical fire retardants because I feel like that's a huge scary thing that they put on these other mattresses. They just coat them with chemicals. So not only do you get the natural inside, the outside is really just clean and healthy and waterproof.
Yeah, but they do use a fire barrier protectant. They use hydrated silica, which it says is the same compounds found in the gemstone opal, which is kind of crazy. But so it does have that fire protectant aspect without using the typical stuff that most mattresses would use.
Right. So it's like your regular mattress, but made a million times better, really organic, healthy. And this is a really silly thing, but it's pretty. Mm-hmm. Not that you're not going to have a sheet on it, but it's just a really pretty mattress. I had it in my nursery as we were doing it and getting it ready just in the crib. And every day I was like, wow, that's a really pretty mattress.
Yeah, I'll have to share the picture that you took on Instagram because your nursery is adorable for one. But I love the mattress, how it looks in the crib too.
Oh, another thing is that I love that it's made in the U.S. It's actually made in L.A. I thought that was a huge plus.
Yeah, and I think anything that's made in California has way higher standards for what kind of chemicals are used in it as well. So they mentioned that on the website too, that it meets all of the California standards, which are higher than U.S. standards, oddly enough.
And has a 10-year warranty, which is amazing also.
Yeah, that's forever. When you're talking about a crib and a toddler mattress,
I know.
I guess if you just have a bunch of kids using it, then
pass it down.
Yeah.
I feel like by the time I have all these kids grown, it will have been 10 years of having a baby or a toddler.
Totally. Lasts longer than a car seat.
Yes, it does.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. And you have the Wild Fern, right? I
do. Let me see. Yeah, I have the Wild Fern 2-stage, and then they have the 2 other price points, which I love. There's something for everyone, depending on what you want to spend and what you want. It's definitely, I think, a good idea to go to their website. Their website's really beautiful, and it's all laid out really clearly right next to one another, and you can pick which mattress you like the best.
Perfect. Well, we're going to be giving away one of the Wild Fern mattresses over on today's show notes page. So if people just go over to thebirthhour.com, they can just enter their email address there and get entered to win a crib mattress. And thank you so much, Danny, for sharing your experience with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Bryn.
Thank you so much again to Lindsey for coming on and sharing her birth stories with us, and to Danny for coming on to talk about Brentwood Home. If you're interested in checking out their crib mattresses and nursing pillows and changing pads, just head over to brentwoodhome.com/birthhour, and you can use the code birthhour to get 15% off your purchase. And if you want to just go ahead and go to today's show notes page over at thebirthhour.com, I'll link up to their website, and that's where the giveaway will also be, where we're giving away one of their Wild Fern crib mattresses. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.